Greetings, I'm John Setzler. Welcome back to the Kamado Joe Cooking Channel. Despite the horrible weather we're having here in Western North Carolina today, we're still going to fire up our Kamado Joe Classic, and we're going to do a stuffed flank steak. So let's get started. Okay, today we're going to set up for some two-zone cooking on my Kamado Joe Classic. I've got a fresh load of charcoal in here, and I'm going to light up 2 of my Kamado Joe fire starter cubes over on the left-hand side of the grill, and we're going to let them burn for several minutes with the lid open. And I'm going to position, a few pieces of the larger charcoal right over the tops of my starter cubes, and we'll let this get going for about 10 minutes or so with the lid open. Okay, now that our fire is going, I've got my divide and conquer rack sitting here on the fire ring. I'm going to set 1/2 of my half moon heat deflectors over on one side, and then I'm going to set 1/2 of a grill in the lower position on the opposite side. Now we are in the low position there, and over the heat deflector in the upper position, I'm going to set the other half so I can have a cool side here and a hot side here. So we're going to close the grill up, and we're going to get the dome temperature up to about 400 to 450 degrees. To get set up for 400 to 450 in a dual zone cooking setup, I'm going to leave my bottom vent on the Classic Joe completely open, and I'm going to open the daisy wheel fully on the top vent and just close this up all the way, and we'll watch it while we're getting our meat ready. And if we need to bring the temperature up, I'll slide the slider open a little bit more, but I don't think I'm going to need to cool it down any. This ought to get us pretty close. Okay, while our grill's warming up, I've got a frying pan warming up here. We're going to melt a little bit of butter in this pan, and then we're going to saute some onions. Okay, after our butter's melted, I've got one medium-sized yellow onion that I've fairly coarsely chopped, and we're going to put on a little bit of fresh cracked black pepper in there with that, and then a couple of turns from the salt mill, and we're going to saute these until they're caramelized. Okay, after our onions have almost finished caramelizing, I'm going to put in about a tablespoon or so of minced garlic, and we're going to stir that in and let that saute with these onions for about another minute or so, and then I'm going to take this off the heat and we're going to set it aside. Okay, I have a flank steak here that weighs almost 2 pounds, and I've got it laid out on my cutting board. I have unpackaged it, I have rinsed it and patted it dry, and my grain is running lengthwise here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my fillet knife and we're going to butterfly this guy and fold it over back. So you can see what I'm doing here. I'm just taking my knife and coming in underneath about halfway through the meat, and we're going to just keep folding it back and keep slicing through until we're all the way almost to the back side. We're not going to cut it completely apart. Okay, now that we have it butterflied, I'm going to take my meat tenderizer mallet and we're going to pound this guy out. Okay, and what we're looking for is a nice rectangle. So the first thing I'm going to do here is we're going to spread on just a little bit of extra virgin olive oil over the inside surface of this meat. And I'm just going to spread it on there nice and evenly, a nice thin coat. And after we've added our seasoning, I'm going to use some of the Kamado Joe steak seasoning on the inside of this meat. And if you don't have this, you can use whatever you might like for steak seasoning. I'm just going to add a fairly thin coat, and then we're going to follow that with our caramelized onions and garlic. We're just going to spread that out, and the next thing I'm going to do is sprinkle on some diced green and red bell pepper. You can put as much or as little of this as you like, and I'm going to follow that with some of my favorite stuffing for beef, which is crumbled blue cheese. We're going to put a nice, probably 2/3 of a cup or so, and then we're going to finish this off by putting a little thin layer of breadcrumbs over the top of all that. And then the next thing we're going to do is roll it up and tie it off. When we roll this up, we want the grains to be running the length of the meat. So I am going to roll this guy up, and you just kind of roll it as tight as you can. So I'm going to turn it back lengthwise on the board where we can tie it up. Okay, now that I've got this guy tied up, we're going to season the outside of it with another liberal coat of our Kamado Joe steak seasoning, and we're going to roll it around and get all sides of it. And after we get a good coat of our steak seasoning on the outside of it, we all know what time it is.
Let's put that bad boy on the grill.
Okay, we're cruising along right at about 450 in the dome temp, so I'm going to burp the Joe here a little bit. I'm going to open it up, and we're going to set this rolled flank steak on the direct side of the grill. And we're going to roll that guy every 2 minutes or so until we get a sear all the way around on the outside. Okay, after we start to get a nice sear on the outside of this meat, we're going to pick it up, put it over on the indirect side of the grill to let it finish. We're going to cook that to an internal temperature of about 130 degrees or so. And at this point, I'm going to close the lid, and I'm just going to close my bottom vent completely, leave the top vent open, and we'll still have plenty of heat to cook this. Okay guys, we're about 25 minutes in here on the indirect side, and I'm checking the temperature, and it's I believe it's about ready. We're going to get right down in the middle. We're going to pull this off and let it rest for about 10 minutes or so before we slice into it. Okay folks, here it is. We're going to cut right down through the middle of this guy and have a look. And we'll have a peek right inside there. Man, I don't know how well you can see that. That looks like a pretty good medium rare. So we're going to slice off a piece of that here in just a moment and have a taste. Man, I just wish you could smell this. Hell, it's just kind of falling apart tender. We'll have a little bite right out of the center of this where it's still nice medium rare. Outstanding. The blue cheese and onions and the seasonings that are here really bring this flank steak to life. Guys, you've got to give this a try. Join us on Facebook, facebook.com/KamadoJoe. Leave us a comment on the video. Let us know what you think. Until next time, this is John Setzler with Kamado Joe Cooking Channel.